Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Talk.
All things
Anodizing.
anodizing.
It's going to be an exciting day today. And why don't we meet our host, Dr. O? Why don't you kick this off?
Wait, I'm the host? Sure, why not? Hi, everyone. My name is George O. I'm a research and development chemist at Quaker Houghton in lovely Alpharetta. The weather is fine, and yeah, there's not too much to say, but we also have here Tej Patel and Mark. Tej.
Hey, everybody. This is Tej Patel. I'm a director with TechYvon here in our Chicago office. We provide chemicals to the anodizing industry, and I'm pretty excited about our next guest, Mark. I know you were instrumental in getting him on our podcast, so thank you.
You know, and George, maybe I should back up. I should have said host with an S on there because we all share this responsibility equally. Right?
It's not just me.
My name is Mark Spencer, sales manager up here at Akron Anodizing in lovely downtown Plymouth, Minnesota, where it's cloudy and it's above zero. So those are always good signs. We are, catch your breath, we are really excited to introduce our industry figure we're going to spend some time with today, Bill Zahner, CEO, president of Zahner Company, located outside of Kansas City, Missouri. Hello, Bill. Welcome to Talk, all things anodizing.
How are you?
You know, just again, really looking forward to it. So in this first segment, let's just get to know you, say hello. We said hello. So, you know, if you could provide us just a little bit of your background, your history in this industry. You mentioned earlier you're an SOB, son of a boss. So, you know, maybe share some of those details with us.
Sure. I'm actually the great grandson of the guy who started the company.
Wow.
About 100 some years ago. I graduated from the University of Kansas School of Engineering in 1978. I got into working with my father, throughout the, when I was even in high school. We were a kind of a siding decking company, did architectural metalwork in the Midwest and in the Kansas City area strictly. We worked with, in those days, all different kinds of metal in the architectural realm only. So that's where, when I got out of college, I went to work there and really got into wanting to understand more about the materials that I was potentially going to devote my life to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you started, what was your first metal that you started working with?
Oh, it would probably, well, back in those days, we worked with aluminum in the form of, like Reynolds had a Vanguard panel, if I recall right, with siding type materials.
Yeah. Right.
We did copper roofs. We did galvanized steel, painted steel siding panels. And we did it on very large structures. If I recall right, one of the larger warehouses done in aluminum was the Hallmark Cards distribution center in Liberty, and we did that project. But I got to understand, working with the material in this little shop, I'd also, because of my education, I was out meeting designers in the local area, and they had tons and tons of questions about working with the different metals. And that's sparked my interest in really learning about the materials and learning about the differences, say, between aluminum and steel, or aluminum and copper or zinc. And I started collecting all this information, you know, the questions really from the designers,
Right.
and put it in my first book. It was published by Wiley in 95 or 94, I believe. And I was doing a lot of work with Frank Geary, and when I met Frank Geary, and he wrote the foreword to the book, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, I had a question for you. You mentioned you were went to the engineering school at Kansas. Did you, when you were in college, were you planning on joining the family business? The reason I asked that is I wasn't, and I joined the family business. So I majored in something that was very different than what I'm doing now. So I was just curious, when you were in college, were you like, yeah, I really want to learn about materials, be a material science engineer, or were you going down a different route?
I was going down a different route at first.
Okay.
I was in psychology.
Ah.
Which has probably helped a lot in dealing with the unions. But I went from, I remember my father called me one day and saying, well, okay, when are you getting something real? And
I've got one of those.
always had an interest in math and science, so I went into civil engineering, and which more on the structural engineering bent. And the materials were very interesting, but it was amazing to me the lack of knowledge that was out there about metals, particularly for architecture. You know, and maybe it was because 70s, early 70s, mid 70s, there was kind of a drive to the curtain wall type extrusions and then metal siding. And it was this sort of an odd level of architecture, but there was so little information. And what I found fascinating was doing research on the first book is I got all this old information out. And I remember one of the first projects we were working on was a restoration of a Folly theater. And it was built at the turn of the century, the turn of the 1900. And it had this cornice work that was made of zinc. And it was wild because none of these sheet metal guys in Kansas City knew what the hell the metal was. We thought it was aluminum. We thought it was different. And so, you know, this was the drive in getting to know the materials. And the benefit, you know, since we're in the aluminum world here, the great part was understanding how the different metals could be created into different forms. Extrusions, for example, on aluminum, lower melting temperature. What does temper mean? You know, all those questions and the little idiosyncrasies between the metal are just not understood. Like welding of aluminum versus, say, welding of steel. It was through my life. It's been an interesting road. You know, we were a small firm in Kansas City, probably more successful, just staying in one area. And now, you know, when I got involved, I started expanding it out to the nation, across the country, and then further even, we've done a lot of work offshore. So that has opened up a lot of interesting expertise in the materials and understanding of the materials.
Bill, have you always been questioning? Because that's one of the themes I'm picking up here. And was that because of your degree from school, or is that's in your nature, exploratory?
It's definitely in my nature. And I say this to all young people that come to work for us: don't quit learning. You know, you keep learning about the systems that you're involved with. Stretch those envelopes out, because we get so stuck and this is the only way you're doing it. And I'm like, no. We're constantly at our facility, and I get deeply involved with it, experimenting on a new technique, new things, getting the understanding of the materials. I loved one time Tom Main, the architect, the famous architect from Morphosis, got the gold medal award in Denver, flew into our office with his family, and he said, I just want to show them what you guys do, because I kind of consider you as our R&D arm.
Oh.
And after that, he did the Emerson School in, or I think just before that, he did the Emerson School in LA with all those aluminum, you could call them birds that clad the outside. It's a beautiful building. I actually was just there last week. It's been up for about 10 years, and it looks like it's brand new. And it's the Emerson College in LA, in Hollywood or something.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that building. It's awesome. Especially when the sun hits it, you get a lot. Visually, it's amazing.
And it's the aluminum shapes on the attached to the to kind of shade the place where the students live. It's amazing how the strength and everything that it brings to the table, and the lightweight aspect makes the metal rather special.
Before we get into,
Have you found?
go ahead.
No. You, Mark, you go.
No. Okay. Before we get into this book, aluminum surfaces, and we need to talk, if you're into anodizing and you're dealing with customers and perception of anodizing and colors, this is a book that you can get on Amazon that we all should have. We have a couple copies here at Acron, and we need to get some more. Before we get into that, Bill, what do you do when you unwind, man? When you get away from the office, and it's just like, or are you always thinking about metals and finishes and designs?
Well, right now I'm in Santa Fe.
Oh,
and Santa Fe is I've got a place down here, and it is there's a lot of art scene, which a lot of work we do is connected to the art world as well. This is probably, I end up having a little office down here, and I end up staying involved with the business and architects. I think I've had probably 10 Zoom meetings in the last week.
Oh, wow.
But this is a place I get away. And actually, one of the things I do kind of semi to relax is write.
Okay.
The books, when COVID hit, a lot of, I'm sitting in my office alone and trying to figure out what's going on. I just started writing, and continue with the research. But I'm involved with writing another book right now. That depends upon if it ever gets published. It's actually a novel, so has nothing to do with metal.
That's exciting. Delving into fiction, huh?
Yeah, coming soon.
Giving it a go. What the heck?
Well,
I talk about all these metal people I've met.
Will it have any anodized aluminum in the novel, Bill?
Yeah.
We'll have to it'll have to have some.
Our fans are inquiring, and yes, that just popped up on the screen. So, okay, good. All right, so you're not experiencing some of the cold, well, George isn't either. Some of the cold weather Tage and I are, so enjoy that.
Well, it actually has been snowing every day this past week here.
Whoa.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
The elevation's fairly high. I can't ski anymore, so anybody that was into skiing, I think they got like 90 inches of snow up there on the mountain.
Gosh.
So in your book, aluminum surfaces, and I believe you wrote that in 2020. Is that, or is it published in 2020?
Correct.
How long did it take you to put all this together?
Wiley had me my publisher had me on a nice deadline. I want to say 6 months.
Okay. The research. I mean, you're just there's just so many nuggets in here, and so many different examples of not only aluminum and paint and all the different alloys, tempers. For you to put all this together, this is a lifetime of work, I would think, of just on aluminum.
Correct, and you try and interweave the experiences that you have on to dispel some of the things that are out there, like there's like the dissimilar metal issues,
Right.
and certain corrosion aspects and relationships to different materials, and aluminum. The one remarkable thing with aluminum is, here you have this material that's so soft, yet when it develops the oxide on it, it becomes incredibly hard. Corundum is one of the hardest things known to man, and all it is aluminum and oxygen.
Right. That's right. That's interesting. I need to ask you this question, because you start off chapter 3 with surface finishing, and you're quoting Albert Einstein. Now, who would have thought we'd have a quote for Albert Einstein for surface finishing? This is great. What was your motivation, and what do you mean by why did you include this? A man should look for what is, and not for what he thinks it should be.
Well, it's kind of back to your point on discovery. And a lot of times with designers, they have a conception that take anodized aluminum, that every piece should be exactly the same. And in reality, some of the best designers, when they look at anodized aluminum, they appreciate it for what it is, and the way it has, it's an oxide developed on the surface. It's very natural, and that adds beauty, when it's done by companies such as your own, that know what the heck you're doing. But it adds it's the character of metal. And you can't sit there and expect it to be paint, because and that's kind of where I'm coming from on that piece. Let it be what it wants to be, not what you think it should be.
How difficult is that of a conversation is that with either an architect,
Yeah.
a GC, or a building owner?
If you can show examples, and that's what I try to do in the book. Unfortunately, the pictures are all so bloody small. But if you show examples of projects that have this variation, and then you try and work and it's always subtle, but it's subtle because the light's hitting it differently. It may be different conditions in the chemical bath. It may be just tiny differences in the metal itself, aluminum in particular.
Mm-hmm.
It might alter that color just a little bit, but it's sort of like the wood in a tree. No two pieces look alike, but they come from the same family, and that's what we try to achieve, even with with all the materials. Make it do what it wants to do. Be honest, I pushed my company a lot of times, and pushed our designers that we worked with to look at the metal, the natural materials. And I consider anodized aluminum a natural surface, because it really is, rather than covering it in paint. And there's several reasons for that today, but it not only that it doesn't, you could paint plastic for all I care, and still, but also when you recycle the material. Aluminum is one of the most recyclable metals on Earth, and the paint kind of throws a little knock in that a little bit. I'm not knocking painted aluminum, because we use it a lot, but I like the natural materials perhaps better personally.
What is your upfront work like then with the designers or the architects, just because there's passion there, you can hear it in your voice about the aluminum oxide, it's the natural coating for aluminum. to warn them that, hey guys, this is what you're going to get. On page 168, you show a picture of color differences that are visible from the same alloy, but from different heats. So can you walk us through some of those conversations?
Sure. And it's for us, if you came to our facility, you would see a lot of prototypes up. So when we get involved with a designer, we walk them through the material. We try and help them determine what surface appearance they want, because everything we deal with really is the surface, how light's going to reflect off of it, how it's going to perform environmentally, how it's going to perform during in the ambient conditions, how strong it is, all that good stuff. So we want to do a prototype to give them an idea. Now with aluminum and anodized aluminum, it's trickier because you can't get them a precise piece until you actually make and have the metal cast and rolled into the plates or sheets or extrusions, pushed into extrusions. You could do examples of that alloy, but it's really, the beauty of anodizing and of the aluminum material, it's the material of that moment. And you can get a representation, but not the actual. And so what we try to describe to the designer is what we're going to show you are representations. And we're going to use these as our targets. But until we cast that material, until the temperature of your anodizing bath is set, there's too many variables at play to get it exact. And we walk them through that and get them a comfort level. They might go, well, wait a minute, I can't show my client that. I go, yeah, let's show them what the possibilities are. You aren't going to cut it down a piece of wood and know what the grain is and the wood is.
Right.
Until you do it. And so it's this conception that designers have on materials and anodized aluminum in particular. That the project we did with you, the probably the most fantastic project ever done in aluminum in my mind is the SoFi Stadium.
There we go.
And here's the beauty of that surface. Both sides are exposed to view. So both sides have to be good. It's this massive layer. There's some 300,000 square feet of surface area. And actually there's two thicknesses of material, 3 millimeter and 5 millimeter. Yet the result is this beautiful, very almost homogeneous surface. If you look at it closely, you're going to see little variations, but it looks so perfect. And working, if you recall, working with a designer on that project, the material that finish had never been used before. It's a whitish, clear anodized using a mineral into the pores that had never been done on an architectural project, particularly of that scale. And the result was amazing. I remember initially setting out all these different, trying to come up with a range and setting them all out. And the architect was worried, well, what if all the range gets stuck over here and all the range we got him settled down, and there's 38,000 individual plates on that job. There's something, I forget, 6 million holes punched in it. But it's the picture, it's the money shot of every NFL game played there.
Right.
And when you can achieve that with a designer, everybody's a hero. and it's and those are a hell of a lot of fun when you can achieve that.
Mm-hmm. There's a YouTube out there of the designer just talking about when the sun is rising, the aluminum looks one way, and when it's setting, just a different hues that interacts with the anodized.
Yeah, and that is the best thing about natural metals. And anodizing, you have people don't understand there's a thin, transparent layer there. So light's going to hit that and reflect in different ways. How would you ever predict that?
Right. How would you predict? I mean, what were you surprised at the end when it's all said and done?
Fascinated. I mean, but that's the beauty of good architecture and the materials, these wonderful materials to work with is they always have a different effect. You can look at them in an office, but until it's in there and it's in its position on Earth, then you're going to see some pretty amazing things. We did an aluminum project, painted plates in Doha, Qatar, and it was 13 millimeter thick plates, all cut out by an artist named Jan Hendricks. And to this day, the client takes everybody that comes to to Qatar in to look at that space. You can only be out there a while because it's hotter than hell, but it does look amazingly beautiful. And it's the strength of the metal and this edge, and we have a lot of fun working with edges as well. The aluminum has a great characteristic of having, when you cut it with a machine mill, it gets very bright. I have a project I'm going to be talking to you about soon here that you're going to love.
Outstanding.
It's working with this artist, and it's based on some experiments we've done, and it uses black anodized and machined surface, and the result is like, what?
Ooh. Maybe a little brightness to it as well. Brighten.
Oh, the black anodized is such a flat surface, and then when you carve it, essentially, all that it just flashes. It almost looks like it's three-dimensional.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Bill, I have a question. I have a question for you, Bill. Obviously, kind of with your experience in working with anodized aluminum, how much of your job is maybe educating an architect? So an architect obviously has a design, but they may defer to you on some material selection. How does that interplay? Obviously, architects are artists too. So how does that interplay kind of play out, right?
Yeah, a lot of times they don't have the metal itself selected. And so what they're looking for is a particular appearance. And but for us, what we bring to the table, because we have this big engineering group as well, we look at the strength of the material, the how's it going to perform in that particular use, and then we integrate the cost, and a lot of times that is related maybe to the thickness, because maybe we could use 2 millimeter in lieu of 3 millimeter. We work with them on those aspects. Also, understanding of how, say, extrusions can be integrated into the surface and develop strength out of the extruded form, and integrate that into some of the pieces. So what we do is we help them achieve what maybe their design is, and help them determine what metal is going to work best for them, and then demonstrate it. Many a time we'll have models of different materials.
Do you find, and this is from at least my experience in going to other parts of the world, I've seen that, at least especially in Europe, architectural anodizing is very common. I could almost see a building in every European city that has it. And in the US, for whatever reason, I don't see that prolific use of anodized aluminum for kind of buildings. What's your take on that? Is that just like a cultural difference? Do we just not have the knowledge that maybe the European market does? What's your take on that?
Well, part of it is I think aluminum in Europe, and there's some fantastic manufacturers over there of aluminum plates and sheets, and a lot of times what I've seen in Europe is they're using a lighter anodizing as well. So they're using, say, 15 versus say 25.
Okay.
But what's happening is they have put an effort into really refining the alloy, whereas the United States, the manufacture of our aluminum materials is not pushing as so much for control of what the anodizing mix, in my mind.
Got it.
Or what the makeup of the metal is. So there's perhaps a little less control. A lot of the metal in the United States is recycled.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's a big part of it. To get it higher purity, we've taken the effort of gone to recycling for the environmental aspect. In Europe, they do as well, but it's a little, I think there's some small mills there that have really concentrated on producing really high quality material.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so that anodizes better.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, and I think, yeah, exactly. And I think that tracks to what I see as a supplier to that market. It's a different market in terms of how they handle the anodizing. There's organizations there like Qualinod. To your point, they have a very tight window of process parameters on the chemistry side too, on the anodizing side. So I think that would track to what you're saying on the metallurgical side. Those parameters are just as kind of tight. So your end product now is better.
Yeah, and the other case too is the environmental issue that's with paint.
Yeah.
And by anodizing, they don't face that same condition.
Exactly.
So Bill, if you owned an anodized company, which we're not recommending, but if you did, how would you, and you're doing an architectural project, what tips would you share with an anodizer? Because if we know our anodic coating is consistent, we did the right current density, we have our tanks in proper line, but you get out to the line and that color is just not matching or is just not meeting the architect's expectations. What's that conversation? Any tips you could offer on that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is get the client involved. If the architect, when you get the client engaged in your process and seeing what you're doing and the efforts you're going through, and understanding what kind of is occurring, a lot of times they can assist you in achieving it. We've gotten involved with a lot of restoring some artwork, for instance, and so it's very kind of narrow window of what you can do with the anodized surface on the artwork, and we get the artist involved or the client involved. Here's what we're going to be able to achieve, and here's the consistency levels, and they. I think the architect on SoFi went to your facility, and it's the tricky part is you usually are supplying it to someone else, like say myself,
right?
And what we want to understand with the designer, like we're all in this together. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. That something does something differently. What we try and also not describe it as a problem. We just want to describe it as, here's our constraints that we want to get around and understand. And a constraint to me is different than a problem. A constraint is that, okay, what level of understanding you, the client, needs, what will you accept,
Right.
and within the constraints we're working in. If you really want pure aluminum, then I'm going to have to get perfect surface, and I'm going to have to do this, and it's going to cost you more. So here's some drawbacks.
Mhm.
That's I find the best way of doing business, really, is I want to get to be a partner with the people I work with and not be some sort of a commodity to them.
Amen.
To that point, Bill, in your mind, what are the questions you ask yourself when you're deciding between, let's say, anodized aluminum, steel, painted aluminum? What are kind of the forks in the road as you kind of go down the design process with an architect?
First of all, it's what do you want it to look like?
Okay.
What's that surface appearance? What do you want it to be? And then we would go, okay, how structurally, we weigh in, okay, how's it supposed to perform? What, in other words, are you using it as a rain screen where it's fully backed with something, and what kind of loads that we're going to deal with? Flatness issues. Sometimes when we go thicker plates and certain alloys, luter lines, imperfections that are difficult to control from the manufacturer's side of the plate that supplies me. So we start, working with the designer as to what your needs are, and then, okay, here's what we're going to have to do to achieve that. And we're going to weigh in structure, the loading criteria, appearance, environmental aspects, and one that's playing more into it every day is a life cycle assessment. And there was an article I think just came out in Denmark, really putting metals as a high carbon material. And I was reading it and I go, but they're not looking at the fact that, like take aluminum, for instance, recycled aluminum, lower temperature. Right. You're never at SoFi Stadium, when they take it apart 100 years from now, every single square inch of that surface is going to be recycled.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. And what other material can you say that about? So when I look at the life cycle assessments, I look at, okay, it's starting up each time. You can't say it about wood. You can't say it about glass, stone. You can repurpose them, but nothing performs like metals. And aluminum, with a low temperature, we describe the fact that, okay, aluminum, they can use heat developed from electrical current, which reduces the carbon, embedded carbon into the surface, and it's lower temperature. So we probably veering off, but we look at different ways of discussing the conditions, the constraints that they are operating under, and trying to convince them that they're the materials that we're working with, and we do it honestly. Mm-hmm. It's worth looking at.
I'm thankful we made that veer, because I was going to follow up with another question about, okay, let's put you back in an ownership position of an anodized shop. And I think you've outlined beautifully through our time today of just how we would promote anodizing. Yeah. Right? Do you have any other nuggets? So your you're the owner of Bill's Anodized Shop in lovely Kansas City. Any other ideas how you'd promote it?
Well, the thing that the other thing with the anodized surface is your chemistry that you use is recycled. The people think, oh, it's this acid baths and all this craziness, and but it's all recycled chemistry. You capture everything. The mineral dyes that are used to add color today are very long lasting. They're minerals versus say chemical dyes per se. A lot of them. I also, want to show the modern the people think of the hard code anodizing and things of the past, and that whole thing has changed. Lower electrical, lower currents, lower. It's just I don't think anybody understands the new processes that you guys use.
On that note, Bill, what do you think, if there's anything you could change, at least on the anodizing side, that would allow the anodizing to be used even more prolifically in the architectural space? What would be that thing? Is it more color consistency? Is it larger tanks for bigger pieces? I just out of curiosity, what do you think's holding us back, if there is anything holding us back as an industry?
I think it's more. I mean, consistency within realm is good, but I think a lot of times the education of the client is probably the number one thing. They don't quite understand the limitations and the constraints. I mean, I'm looking at the brick wall behind you, and it's all different tones. I mean,
exactly.
It's beautiful because it is that.
Okay.
It's I think there's going to be an explosion of anodizing I think it's going to be brought back into form here, and then there'll be limitations on the constraints of your tank size.
Sure.
I think keep pushing some of the processes. I know that we're seeing things where the designer wants different tones of anodizing, wants brighter, more reflective tones. I'm working on one where they want a reddish pink color. And I've shown them the red color of the anodizing, and they go, well, okay, if you can lighten that down. You look at a project like we did on Grace Farms, the roof of Grace Farms up in Connecticut. It made the cover, I think, of Architecture magazine, and this was a year or two couple of years ago, and it's anodized, clear anodized on I think off coil, and no one knows what the material is. They always ask us, what we want that, what's that material? So it's clear anodized. No way, it's not clear. and SoFi is the same way. They don't understand it, but here's a beauty, again, back to the point with SoFi, you got both sides look beautiful.
Yeah.
You can't do that with other material. We can't do that with paint.
Yeah.
You can, but it drives them crazy.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're coming close to our time with you, Bill. Let's go around. I do have a question. You dedicated aluminum surfaces to Jan Hendricks, to a great artist and good friend, Jan Hendricks.
Correct. He's an artist out of Mexico that we've done a lot of work with. We've done a lot of aluminum shaped projects. You see some in the book. We're always working with him on different projects. He's become a good friend. Started working with him probably in 2006, and have worked on dozens of projects with him. And here, back to your point on what is, early on when you said what gets you excited. Artists and architects, when they come into our facility, it's you work with their ideas, and you can add and expand upon them, and that's the fun. It's sort of you look at what we know before, and then you try something further and further and further. I had our architect call wanting to have the facade of his building all made from recycled aluminum. I said, no problem. He says, well, I want it to look organic and cast. So we made a bunch of panels, and we realized the size of the building would have required us to become probably one of the biggest scrap companies in the United States. I think it required 3 million pounds of aluminum scrap to melt and turn into these. We cast them on the ground, just to make them bubbly, and it was crazy. But I do think the future for your metal and your surface finishes is going to expand and not contract in the United States and around the world.
So I guess kind of a related question to that is, you've talked about architects asking for like a red pink, and these are things that are unusual, but they're feasible, right? Is there anything that they've asked for that we just can't do at all, or any cool effects that you can imagine would be really neat to be able to put on a building?
Haven't arrived there yet. I'm turned 68. Maybe in a couple of years I'll figure what we can't do. We're having fun on probably one of the most amazing aluminum projects right now, and it's been kind of a interesting challenge. And it was the restoration of the chapel at the Air Force Academy, and it's got we're taking it all apart and rebuilding it. And it's made of plates and extrusions, and here these things were done back in the 60s, and the requirement is we have to match that exact alloy. So we've checked it out, and we had it cast specifically to match that alloy. So we had to corrupt it, and it gets anodizing. We've been working with you on figuring out how to make that surface and exactly match what it was done back in the early 60s. Incredible challenge, an incredible project. And those we like the challenge, I guess, and we like the challenge when we can work with good partners to achieve them.
Well, we're almost there.
We are.
Is there anything that we haven't spoke about, Bill, that's on your mind you'd like to share with our listening audience?
The things that we're finding, in the manufacturing using your material, like anodizing, one of the tricks there is does a weld change in color and some of the effects there. And so what we try and introduce is some of our manufacturing approaches that understand those constraints, understand that a weld actually changes the alloy slightly, and either conceal them or make it in such a way that doesn't take away from the art or architecture, and we still can use the anodized surface. And so the techniques, it's kind of not only do you have the anodizing world and the constraints you have, it's in the manufacturing. How do we make it all work together effectively? And those are the things that I love to put to my people, and they actually, I think they get bored if they didn't have those things, try and figure out. Right. I mean, SoFi Stadium, go back to that a second, 38,000 panels. I had never seen a project fabricated, finished, installed so well like an orchestra. It was such a choreographed process. Of 38,000 panels, only 2 were remade.
Oh wow!
And every one of them's different. But it was this choreographed effort of putting it in, getting it to Acron, and then getting it out to the site, getting it set onto the space frames correctly. It just worked so smoothly. It's the way you want. It's the way we want to do work tomorrow. Yeah. Get rid of the waste, make it all work so clean and smoothly. And that's the, if I could leave with one thing, it's the I wish I was young starting up again, in the industry, because I think there's so much that's going to be happening and so much opportunity in the working on some incredible projects.
You have a level of enthusiasm that's going to carry you for a while. Just to hear you talk about that passion, about 38,000 panels, 2 rejected, to hear you about the choreography, about the dance of it all, and just going back and looking at it.
It's inspiring to me too.
Yeah, it makes it fun. It makes it fun.
It really does.
If our listeners want to reach out to you, Bill, if they want to, learn, just have a dialogue with you, is there any way, whether it's LinkedIn or anything like that you'd recommend that they?
Feel free to email me. It's bzahner@azahner.com.
Okay.
Perfect. Does anyone else have? Go ahead.
And I look forward to working with a lot of your listeners and yourself again on some amazing stuff. Well,
we're going to conclude. This book is on Amazon, and there's 6 others. If you are involved with anodizing, this is as good as Braces, Warnock and Pinner. Did I say that right, Tage? Warnock Pinner?
Yep.
There are just so much knowledge in here that we can use to translate to the end user to support anodizing. And so thank you, Bill, for taking the time for writing that. There's more than 6 months of your time that's in this book. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all.
So that brings us to the end of our podcast with Bill Zahner today, CEO, President of Zahner Company, located in lovely Kansas City, Missouri. We appreciate everyone listening. George, you want to take us home?
No, you do it, Mark.
Okay. Thank you for listening to Anno Talk. All things
anodizing.